many lines of questioning in relation to independent assessments today, Minister. I'd actually like to start on a wildly different topic, although in some ways related, that of psychiatric assistance animals and the challenges that many people in the community experience when trying to fund psychiatric assistance animals in their plan. In way of kind of contextualising the issue, I'm just going to briefly take you through two constituent specific issues that we have been dealing with and that have come to the attention of my office. The first is of Luke and Josh Chandler, who are West Australians, live quite near me, and in 2021 approached the NDIS as part of their regular plan review cycles. Luke and Josh are in many ways success stories of the NDIS. They are both, and I should clarify, I'm sharing this information with their full permission and they are following along at home. They are both autistic and journey with significant psychosocial disability as well. And nevertheless, were approaching the NDIS as part of a significant life change moment, that being living independently, which had been a goal of theirs for a while. As part of that engagement with the agency, they subsequently received a plan in February of 2021. These were twins, I should clarify as well. That not only rejected an application for a psychiatric assistance animal, it also cut Luke's plan, removed all psychological assistance from Luke's plan and from Josh's plan, and additionally cut support worker funding hours by 50%. They approached me deeply concerned with this outcome. We worked with the ministerial and parliamentary liaison team to bring that to the agency's attention, and they have recently received updated plans that restored that psychological funding and support worker hours. However, the request for a psychiatric assistance dog was once again rejected. Now, this is despite the fact that the family and the two individuals particularly had assembled an interdisciplinary team covering psychologists, occupational therapists and the like to compile very detailed applications as part of the agency's required assistance animal template. They are in a situation now where they are still trialling the dog to be able to provide more evidence to the agency of the benefit that this animal, this living piece of assistive technology, let's be quite frank, is having on their lives, and they are being able to, with the support of this AT, engage in the community and to undertake tasks that are directly relevant to their goals. What concerns me is, having read through the two very detailed reports, the response from the agency, the response from the planner denying this request for this support doesn't actually seem to address in any tangible way the evidence that has been presented to the planner. So could I just first of all get your commitment to, I will pass you through the relevant details, but to look into this case specifically, because the twins are at a point where unless the agency actually properly engages in this process, they are going to have to go to the AAT, which will be a drawn-out process for two individuals that have already had to deal with the loss of psych support in the middle of COVID-19, which is not a good thing to do.
Look, Senator Steele-John, thank you. I'll say a little bit and then I'll hand over to Mr Hoffman. Was it Luke and Josh?
Luke and Josh Chandler, yes.
So first of all, say hello to Luke and Josh, and thank you very much for raising this through Senator Steele-John. The issue of animals, and I haven't heard it called living assisted technology, but I think that's a great terminology for it, is something that I am aware of, and it, not just necessarily for autism, but also in case of epilepsy and possibly other disabilities as well. It's something that I have raised with the NDIA, and it is something that I'm also actively looking at. So if you'd like to write to me about Luke and Josh, I would be very happy to have a look at that further with the NDIA, for them personally, but also for the wider issue. And I am glad to hear that the NDIA has assisted them, and hopefully it's making changes to their lives as well. So that's an unequivocal yes from me, and I'll hand over to the CEO.
I might just take you through the secondary case, and then I actually have got some questions for both you and the CEO, which are relevant to some of the systemic issues that are causing these problems.
Just on that, Senator Steele-John, perhaps one other point I'd make. So yes, please.
Yes.
And then before we go to the CEO, in terms of this particular case and many others, where there is very little flexibility and there are far too many rules, and that whole process of having to go back every year and fight line by line for services and support, I absolutely have heard that from right across the board, that people want that changed. That is one of the reasons that we have introduced a discussion paper about the personalised budgets, so that people can get far more flexibility in terms of their packages. Now, I don't know whether that would solve this particular case.
It wouldn't.
But it would certainly provide more flexibility.
Can I just add a bit of
Yes.
context here? 18 months ago, I brought a very similar case.
You did.
And I'm sure Ms Campbell will remember it. And we ended up getting a good outcome, because they were actually here in the room also, and we managed to deal with it straight away. But the point being, the bigger issue was exactly the same thing. So it was, at the time, pretty certain there was a commitment made to actually deal with this issue.
Well, I will, as I said, we'll go, but I think, so thank you, Senator Siewert, and thank you, Senator Steele-John. Yeah. So we'll have a look at that issue, and more from a policy perspective as well. But anyway,
I just want to give you the second case, and then we'll go to the detail. So I'm also, as you know, a member of the Joint Standing Committee on the NDIS. That committee held a hearing in Canberra a couple of weeks back. We're very lucky to have with us to give evidence Molly and Monica Masham, who gave evidence with the support of Molly's psychiatric assistance animal, Zully. Molly is, again, a success story of the NDIS, has been a participant for many years, is a young woman who, with the support of Zully, her assistance dog, has been able to, or was on track, to complete her first university year without any delays, extensions, or anything like that, something I never achieved as a university student, I'll be honest with you. They have had funding for Zully in Molly's plan for 2 consecutive cycles, and at the first application for funding for Zully, they faced a really discriminatory response from the agency, who the planner asserted that Molly, as an autistic woman, was likely to abuse Zully, and also asserted that Zully, a lovely little spaniel cross, was likely to have acted in a way that was vicious towards Molly. And now this went round in a circle until the planner was able to meet the dog and to gain additional information, at which time funding for Zully was approved. And this is really critical, because a psychiatric assistance dog differs from a guide dog in one critical way, and that is to say, you cannot gain a public access assistance test, that is the PAT test certification, that is required by the agency for funding of an assistance animal, until you have trialled the animal and trained the animal alongside the participant, because that is the only way you are then able to gain PAT accreditation. So it's not like a guide dog. You have to work with the client first, in the same way, and this goes back to my point about living assisted technology, in the same way that many pieces of AT require a period of trialling to get right before you're then able to utilise it. That is the process with a psychiatric assistance dog, at which point they're able to gain the PAT and comply with the rules. Now, when Molly came round for her most recent review, it was a different planner, and we were back to square one. even though Zully had supported Molly to achieve her goals above and beyond what the agency might consider successful. We were back to an accusation of viciousness on behalf of Zully and a potential for Molly to harm Zully. This has caused incredible stress for the family, even though they've had this conversation once before. And I want two things from you, if that's okay. One, a commitment again to look into Molly's case and actually address this, because they've already done this conversation once. And the other thing is to bring to your attention the chicken and the egg problem here. Currently, the agency requires an animal to be PAT certified. You can't PAT certify a psychiatric assistance dog until you have trialled that animal and trained the animal alongside the individual they are working with, and that animal then requires continual updated training to continue to receive its PAT accreditation. Since Molly gave evidence, my office has been inundated, absolutely inundated, with this same story across the country of people being told you are autistic or neurodiverse in a different way, therefore you are going to viciously attack the animal, or the animal will viciously attack you. And that is just not acceptable. Not acceptable at all.
So, Senator Steele-John, I can absolutely give you a guarantee that not only have I already started to look into this, but I will do so with renewed vim and vigour on this. I would be very happy to get direct representations from Molly and Monica about that. I've also had direct representations to me, and I've also heard about others. As I said, in the case that was raised with me, it was about epilepsy, warning of. So I think that there's an issue that we do have to look at in terms of with the NDIA in terms of policy, so that we get some consistency. I'm a huge fan, and I understand the importance of that process you describe. It is not just a simply getting, a puppy turns up one day. It's got to be the right dog. It's got to be, if it's the dog, trained, going through that process of matching, and all of those things. And it depends on the disability, or the psychosocial, or whether it's physical disabilities. So look, I get the point, Senator Steele-John, and I agree with you. So I'll undertake to work again with the NDIA on this and have a look at how we can get more consistency in policy and more clarity in terms of animal support. Because
what seems to be happening to me, Minister, the one of the bits of consistency that exists is if a participant has, in any of the information they've provided to the agency, and you would know as well as I that sometimes it can be very difficult to get a planner to engage with the information that is provided to them by a participant. If they have at any point disclosed that some of their behaviours may involve anything that is even roughly like in a certain context, if I'm overstimulated, I might flail my arms, for instance. That's being interpreted by the agency as this participant could therefore be violent and pose a risk to the dog.
So, Senator Steele-John, both for Luke and Josh and also for Molly and Monica, why don't we set up something separately with you? We can have a talk to both of those families and perhaps use those as a case with a couple of others that have come to our attention, and we can work with you on what we can do.
And Mr. Hoffman, Jennifer Elborn shared with my office. She's a constituent from Victoria. Both her and her partner. She had funding for an assistance dog prior to her entry into the scheme. Her partner also was prospectively feeling that this piece of AT would be useful. And I'll just quote Jennifer directly. On the 20th of November 2020, during a planning meeting held for my husband, I was present, the planner delegate unequivocally stated that she and other delegates had been told that under no circumstances would they approve support for her assistance animal or for her partners, and that had been a message they had received clearly from the planner and delegate had received clearly from their boss. The message had come down, we are no longer funding this. So can I ask you, Mr. Hoffman, has this been communicated in your knowledge to panel delegates that there is a position of funding it under no circumstances?
No, Senator.
Well, then why would that panel delegate have repeated that to Jennifer?
Senator, I can't comment on what may or may not have been said in that circumstance and the context, etc. You asked me a question, to my knowledge, is there any such direction? The answer is no, and very clearly no. Since, as Senator Siewert was referring to some time back, we have been working hard on these issues, commissioned 3 reports from La Trobe University and their expertise there around key terms for animals in disability assistance roles, reviewing assistance animal effectiveness, NDIS participant trained assistance dogs, which goes to the point you've raised around the public access test and how that is met. We're currently doing a lot of work to update our operational guideline and approach for assistance animals. So these issues, which are timely and will be helpful in completing that. The individual cases are difficult to comment on here without seeing the background to them. Clearly, we want to get the right sort of outcomes. We need to do that in the context of Section 34 in terms of the support being effective, in terms of it being safe, and so on, as you know. But as the Minister has indicated, and I certainly support that, and as I've also said, we're in the midst of significant work on our guidelines for this right now, and so it is timely that we can complete this.
Minister, can I just share with you, I've read that La Trobe University in an effort to understand what is going wrong at the centre of this process. Can I just ask you to just go away and sit down and read it if you haven't done? There's a big problem with it. A lot of the assumptions that underpin the research imagine, it seems, the conversations around what informal assistance looks like for children. It's much more aimed at what might the parent provide, or, you know, and that's actually not an appropriate assumption to make for 28-year-old men that are moving out of home. And I think a lot of the problems that we are seeing actually come from the La Trobe University being lent on, the research being lent on to make the decision. I just want to flag with you as well, so Luke and Josh.
Just on that, Senator Steele-John, what we'll do is, so any concerns you've got about that, we'll organise a separate session for you and for the people that you've talked about today. To actually give first-person input, and we can actually go through and unpack all of that.
Yeah, of course. And you know from your previous experience as Defence Minister that DVA does a lot of work around psychiatric assistance animals, and there's a lot of benefits to veterans with this stuff. Just my last thing, then I'll pass back. Luke and Josh need to know what to do by the 9th of June. That's their date to go to the AAT or not. So this is actually really quite time sensitive. We know that AAT processes can be incredibly distressing for participants, and these are 2 blokes who just want to get on with their life and be an NDIS success story. So if we can be pretty quick about this, it'd be really good.
Before I go to Senator Kitching, Senator Lambie's just asked to ask one question on the same topic, so if we could just have Senator Lambie online very briefly.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. I just wanted to quickly, I'm just wondering why your assistance dogs, I'm not 100% sure how it's been done under the NDIA or NDIS, but I do know that it's taken many years for Veterans Affairs to finally get it right. Yeah. So I'm asking, have you been in and had meetings with DVA and maybe followed what they're doing? The only thing they're not doing right at the moment is putting their foot on the throttle to get more of those dogs out there and move this fast.